Alright, what is going on, guys? It is XLT here, bringing you a brand new video on my channel. And now today we're going to be doing the second installment of the college football player rankings, or my top 5, or whatever you guys want to call it. I'll just stick with the top 5 position rankings. And in the last video, I know we did the quarterbacks, and it got a little bit of love. Not as much as I wanted it to, but a lot of my videos, or a few of my videos, have been getting a lot of traction and a lot of love and a lot of comments and all that stuff, and I really do appreciate that. It's kind of crazy that I only started this channel about, a month or two ago, and I'm already getting a lot of views and subscribers and likes and comments and all that stuff. But jumping into the series that we're going to be continuing today, we're going to be doing the exact same thing as we did in the last video, starting with the sleeper pick, moving all the way up to number 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And in today's video, we're going to be sticking on the offensive side of the ball, and we're going to be doing running backs. I didn't really get a lot of comments on the last video saying, hey, you should do this position or this position, so I thought it'd just be fair to stick on the offensive side of the ball and go with a position that has a lot of very, very good players in this year's draft. You've got guys like Rashad Penny, you've got guys like Amari Johnson, Saquon Barkley is a very good player and probably a generational talent, as a lot of people like to say, but I think he's very good. But I don't like putting the term generational talent on people, because then they tend to not perform up to that generational talent like mark that we put on them, and then we all get disappointed. So you guys are about to find out my rankings just in a few seconds, so let's hop right into the video. Alright, starting off with the sleeper pick for this video, I have a guy that a lot of people, he's kind of flying under the radar a little bit. He's not necessarily on a lot of people's radar, but he is, in my opinion, a very good player. And I say sleeper pick, but maybe it should be titled like underrated player or something like that, because I don't think this guy's going to be like a sleeper where he falls all the way to the 6th or the 7th round and nobody picks him up or anything like that, and then he ends up being like super good. But I do think he is a guy that's underrated and I think could fall in the draft a little bit, and that guy is Akron Wadley from Iowa. He's not a super standout player, but you definitely have seen some of his highlights on SportsCenter. He is a very versatile back. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, he can run routes, and he's very good at doing both of those things, and he can run in between the tackles fairly well. I wouldn't say that he's a Leonard Fournette or a Darius guys where they just like to bulldoze people, run them over in between the tackles, but he does get down and down and dirty in the trenches. He does like to get up there and be physical with people, and he's not super elusive. That's the thing. Like, he's not the biggest back in the world. He's not like I said, Leonard Fournette. He's not like 240, 230 pounds, and he's running in between the tackles. He's like only like 220, I think, is about his weight. And he runs in between the tackles, not super effectively, but he does it good enough to where that he can do it consistently. But like I said, he's not super elusive, so he doesn't have one aspect of his game that really stands out to scouts, and I think that's why it worries him, because there's guys on this list like Sony Michel, great out of the backfield and great one-cut speed. He can take it to the house whenever. And then you've got guys like Nick Chubb, who are great in between the tackles and are very physical runners, and they have single traits that stand out, but Akron Wadley doesn't really have one of those. Maybe it's pass catching, I'm not really sure, but he's very well rounded at everything. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Kareem Hunt coming into the draft last year. A lot of people said that he wasn't super good at anything, or not that he wasn't good at anything, but he didn't have one character trait that stood out. And then he went into the combine, he didn't run particularly well, but he did excel in the pass catching drills and in the running drills and stuff like that, and he ended up being one of the best rookies in the NFL this season, being drafted in the 3rd round. So I think Akron Wadley can kind of follow that a little bit, because he's not great at anything, or sorry, he's good at a lot of stuff, but he's not great at one specific thing. And I think that is kind of a hindrance, and it's kind of a good thing, because then people tend to fall when they're not super good at one particular thing. And if he can go, I'd probably in the late 3rd to middle 4th, the middle of the 4th would be the bottom of where I think he would go, but I think he's more of a 3rd and 4th round type guy. That's where I'd project him at. So I think he could be a very good running back, because like I said, he kind of models Kareem Hunt in a sense of that he is kind of like a Swiss Army knife. He can do a lot of stuff, but he's not super good at one thing. And I think any team that gets him in the 3rd or the 4th round would be getting an absolute steal. Alright, here we are jumping into the actual rankings, starting at the number 5 spot. I have a guy that a lot of people are really high on. They say his ceiling is through the roof, and it's because he's kind of underdeveloped and his game isn't as sharp as a lot of people's is. And that guy's going to be Sony Michel from Georgia. Obviously the more elusive, speedy, pass-catching running back in that backfield duo that they had at Georgia that absolutely killed the entire year. I think they had the most rushing yards by any backfielder running back tandem since the Pony Express with Eric Dickerson, and I can't remember that other guy's name. Oh man, it's on the tip of my tongue. We'll forget about it. But they were a very effective team. They obviously killed Oklahoma in that Rose Bowl game, and Sony Michel had an incredible game. 222 yards on 15 touches alone is absolutely insane, and that's kind of the game that put him on the map a little bit. They kind of got scouts saying, you know, this guy's got some game, this guy can do a lot. He's gotten some comparisons to like what Alvin Kamara did in the NFL his rookie season. They compared his season to Sony Michel's season this year. I don't really want to do that because the NFL is a totally different game than college football, but I do see the stats. He's a very elusive, very one-cut, speedy guy that if he gets a crease, if he can find a hole, bam, he's going to take it to the house. He's a home run hitter, and he's very good out of the backfield in terms of catching the ball, which are two very good things that you want to have in today's NFL. We've seen guys like Alvin Kamara lead all running backs in reception yards with like 800, almost 900 yards. Christian McCaffrey, as a running back, caught 80 passes. I mean, it's just insane how the game is evolving into more pass-oriented and more just, you know, getting your playmakers the ball in space rather than handing it to them. But handing it to them still does work. But just the knocks that I have on Sony Michel, he's not a very physical runner. He's a little on the shorter end and on the thinner end. He doesn't have really the muscle to, you know, compete in the NFL in terms of shaking off tacklers and breaking tackles and stuff like that. But that was one thing that I saw. Also, his vision can vary from time to time. He's not super consistent with hitting the holes and finding the gaps. The holes kind of got to be wide open if he wants to hit it. And his lateral quickness is okay, but it's not great. He's more, like I said, he's more of a one-cut running back. If he can get a crease and get a hole, then he's going to take it to the house. And that's the speed that he possesses, and that's why he's number 5 on my list, because he can make a home run play. He can score a touchdown at any time in any position in the game through the air. I guess through the air, but through catching the ball is what I want to say. Through catching the ball or running the ball, he can make a play and he can make an instant impact on the game. And I think that if he can bring that to an NFL team, that they will greatly appreciate that. He may be a good punt returner in the NFL. I don't know if he ever did that at Georgia, but he might want to try that out. Or at least a kick returner. You saw Alvin Kamara. I don't think he returned kicks at Tennessee. If he did, then I didn't know about it. But he did a pretty good job at doing it for the Saints this year. So if Sony Michel wants to kind of add that to his game, I think that'd be a good thing to add, since he's kind of not the downhill physical runner that a lot of running backs in the NFL are today. If he can add, you know, another aspect to his game like special teams, I think that would boost his draft stock, or that would boost his productivity on a team once he gets there. But yeah, that's Sony Michel at the number 5 spot. Let's move on to number 4. All right, jumping into the number 4 spot, we're going to have a running back from the same conference. Actually, we're going to have 3 running backs in this list from the same conference. This guy is a very different running back, though, at the number 4 spot. He's more physical. He's more downhill. His cuts are okay, but it's more about his physicality and his toughness and his hard-nosedness and his ability to run in between the tackles and outside the tackles that I think gives him a little bit of edge on the number 5 prospect, and that's going to be Darius Guice from LSU. Leonard Fournette's successor is what a lot of people like to call him. A lot of people said when Leonard Fournette was there his last season there, and Darius Guice's, I don't know if that was his first, I think that was his sophomore year, where he kind of started to get a little more reps behind Leonard Fournette. A lot of people said that Darius Guice looked way better as a running back than Leonard Fournette did, and I didn't really think so, but because I saw Leonard Fournette's potential to be a great NFL running back because of his durability and his physicality and all that stuff. But I guess it's a theme with LSU running backs to be super physical and super hard-nosed. You've got guys like Spencer Ware, who else? Jeremy Hill's a super hard-nosed guy, super physical runner, and then you've got guys obviously like Leonard Fournette, who's an absolute bulldozer, a human wrecking ball, and you've got guys like, you know, Darius Guice, who isn't built to be like a Leonard Fournette style runner, but he runs very physical. I think he's only like 215, maybe 200. I think he's only 215 pounds, I think, but he runs like he's 235. I mean, he puts his shoulder down and he will run through absolutely anybody, and he's a tough yard getter, and that's what I like to see in college football. There's not a lot of guys who, you know, just put their head down and will run somebody over. They like to run around people, like kind of like Sony Michel. They like to be a one-cut, speedy guy, and Darius Guice kind of brings back the old football kind of style into LSU, but I don't really know if he fit very well into their scheme. I watched a lot of his games, and at the beginning of the year and in some of my recent mock drafts, I have him going in the first round, I think, but I just don't. I've watched some of his games, and I think he's kind of tapered off. I did have him earlier in the season before I started doing YouTube. I had him as my number 2 running back, and now he's kind of dropped a couple spots down the list to number 4, and I just think that I just didn't really see a lot that I liked. I saw physicality, and I saw the ability to hit a hole and to, make a play out of it, but I didn't really see a lot of just straight up success. It took a lot of touches for him to get a lot of yards. When you see guys in college, you want them to get, you don't want their touches to be super high every game. You want them to be like, 15 to 25, I think that's the max I would want to see out of a college running back in a game, is 25 touches, and he was getting like 60 yards on 14 touches most games. So I just didn't really see the productivity and the consistency from last year to this year, but I do like his play, and I do think that he warrants being at the number 4 spot because of his ability to run inside the tackles and outside the tackles. They had a really weird scheme at LSU. I didn't really know what they were doing, and it wasn't really a super effective offense, so I think that if he was in a different scheme, like a more power, more, counter power zone type scheme, that he would be able to have a little bit more success, but their quarterback play also limited them a lot. Etlinger, I think is his name. I don't think it's Chase. Maybe it's Mike. I don't really know. I'm just gonna say it's Etlinger, but or Ellinger. I can't remember. Jeez, I'm just gonna stop guessing. But their quarterback play kind of limited their offense a little bit, and it kind of made them rely on Darius a lot. So teams were just game planning to stop Darius, and it worked most of the time. They would just load the box, and he would just only get like 2-3 yards a carry, maybe bust one, but then back to 2 or 3 yards. So he was just limited throughout the entire season. But I do think that he has very good potential to be, he can be a 3-down running back in the NFL because he does have the ability to catch the ball. I think he's just going to have to work on his ability to be more diverse. He didn't catch a lot of passes at LSU, but he's going to have to definitely evolve into doing that in the NFL. But other than that, I do really like him as a prospect, and I do think he'll probably go in the 2nd round maybe. I think he'll go 2nd round definitely. If he falls all the way to the 3rd, that's an absolute steal. But yeah, that's my take on Darius, guys, at the number 4 spot. Moving on to number 3. All right, moving on to the number 3 spot, we have yet another running back from the SEC, continuing the trend, I guess. And this guy is personally, he's not the best running back prospect in this draft, but I think that he is a very good prospect, and he is my favorite. So I kind of have a little biased here. I don't know why he's my favorite. He torched my one of my favorite college football teams. He absolutely killed us in a game earlier in the year for like 4 or 5 touchdowns. If you haven't picked up on the hints already, it is going to be Ronald Johnson from Auburn, a very physical downhill runner. He reminds a lot of people apparently of Le'Veon Bell, just in the way that he is patient behind the line and he waits for holes to open up, and then he makes his cut, or he just sticks his nose in and falls forward and gets a couple yards. And he is a very versatile back. He's not the biggest dude. He's not as big as Le'Veon Bell, but I do think he's got a pretty good stature to him. He's not, anything like, he's not short and down to the earth and really like chunky and big or anything like that, and he's not built like Leonard Fournette is, but he's a very, tall, not tall, I wouldn't say tall, but he's a pretty good height and a pretty good build for the type of running that he wants to do. And that's like I said, a very physical downhill runner in between the tackles. He likes getting dirty in between the trenches a little bit, but I have him at the number 3 spot mainly because of his success and his ability to run the ball in between and outside of the tackles, and in a very hard conference to do so in the SEC, where that's where all the big dogs are playing at. That's where all the best D-lines in the country are. That's where Alabama, that's where Georgia plays. That's where all these guys, all these NFL prospects for D linemen, that's where all they come out from. So being successful against those guys and those front sevens is a very good thing to have. And also, he's very versatile. That Auburn offense is very weird. Is it still Gene Chizik that runs that, or is it Gus Malzahn? I can't remember. I think it's Gus Malzahn. Both of the maybe he quit too. I can't remember. I don't really keep up with college football coaches that much. But that offense at Auburn is a very, very unorthodox one, I'd like to say. They do like to run a lot of wildcat with him, which was a very popular trend like 10 years ago. So they like to run a lot of wildcat with Ronald Johnson. Just give him the ball and get out and let him run and do his thing. And they also like to set him up on screen passes, line him up in the slot. He's a very versatile guy. He can do pretty much anything you wanted to, and he's very good at pass blocking, which is not a very popular thing that you see coming out of college football. You see those guys develop it as they are in the NFL, like DeMarco Murray or Charkandrick West, who's a very good pass blocker. Not just saying that because he plays for the Chiefs. He's been recognized as a very good pass blocking running back, and that adds a lot of value to your draft stock. So I think that Kerryon Johnson is a very good player. He's got some very good traits. There's just some things that are they're not very concerning, but they're a little bit concerning about him. Those things are going to be his fumble numbers, not really his numbers, but just his ball security. I think he had a fumble in the SEC championship game that kind of like, turned the point to where Georgia kind of took over and made it their game. He had a couple fumbles earlier in the season too, towards the middle of the season. And you just want to see him, develop more ball security as the year goes on. In terms of just, as the college football year goes on, and when we're in the combine, we want to see that he can, hold that ball high and tight and use the proper form and not drop it or anything like that. And you also want to see that once you get into training camp and preseason, that he has the ability to hold on to the ball even in the NFL. And the other thing was, I think he had some knee injuries at Auburn. I know that he was injured a little bit. He was banged up a little bit, but, knees are a very, very big part of a running back's game. Obviously, they're a big part of anybody's game. But, knees, I guess, are like the Dolphins think that if you have bad knees, you're like just a bad player, because they traded Jay Ajayi mainly because Kenyon Drake was up and coming running back, and I can agree with that, but they traded him because he had some knee problems, I guess is what they said. That was one of the reports, but you just want to see him, carry on, at least be more healthy. That's not something you can fix, but hopefully he can stay healthy, especially in the knee department, the lower leg department. That's a very big part of a running back's game, is your knees. If your knees go out on you, you can pretty much call it a career. There were guys in, I think, the 80s and 90s who that was due to the AstroTurf, but there were guys who were blowing out their knees left and right, and they just never played a down of football again. But hopefully that doesn't happen to Kerryon. I wouldn't compare him to Le'Veon Bell in any way, but he does run very similar to Le'Veon Bell. I can see why people see that, but I'm not comparing him to Le'Veon Bell at all. I don't think he kind of is like him, but I'm not going to compare it to him because I don't like making pro comparisons to guys who are super, super, the best of their position. But he does have similar styles to Le'Veon Bell. He's a little more physical. He's a little more of a physical runner than Le'Veon is. Le'Veon likes to juke you out and cut you up, but Kerryon just kind of likes to, wait, shuffle, bam, hit the hole, put his shoulder down, get 4 or 5 yards. And I do think he's a very effective runner. I do think he will be able to use that very well in the NFL. And I think I'd probably give him a second round grade, or not really a grade, but I think I project him into the second round, early second round. Maybe if the Browns don't get Saquon in the first, maybe if they go quarterback, D-back with their 1 and 4 pick, with the first pick of the second round, they can get, they can nab maybe a Ronald Jones or a Kerryon Johnson, or one of these other guys, Darius guys, Sony Michel. They have the pick of the lot pretty much. So maybe he goes there. Maybe he goes to a team like the Colts with a later pick in that draft. Maybe he goes somewhere in the middle. I think he goes higher second round. He goes top half second round, I think, is where I'd project him at. So yeah, that's my ranking for Kerryon Johnson, the number 3 spot. Moving on to the top 2 players for this ranking. All right, moving into the top 2 spots of this ranking video. You guys probably already know who's going to be number 1, but you may or may not know who's going to be number 2. He's a guy that isn't necessarily, I think some people have him rated pretty low, or just not even in their top 5. I don't really know why. I've seen some lists where he's not even in the top 5, and they've got different guys in here. They've got guys like Rashad Penny, or they've got guys like LJ Scott or something like that. But he's a guy who I think possesses a lot of very good qualities. He's not great at running in between the tackles, but he's pretty good. He's not necessarily the biggest guy, but he does possess some physicality when he's running the ball, and that's a very good thing to have, especially at a smaller size, being able to, body through people and power through people and keep your legs running. And that guy is going to be Ronald Jones from USC. He possesses a lot of things, like I just said, that we've seen a lot of these other guys. He's good at catching the ball out of the backfield, even though USC didn't necessarily use him that way. I think they should have done that more, at least getting him the ball in open space, getting their best playmaker the ball, and making it more advantageous for him and for their team to, make some big plays, because he's a home run hitter. He's a big play guy, and that, I think, is his best quality. If he can, he's not just a straight line one cut back. He's very elusive. He's very slippery. He's not going to break a ton of tackles through power like Kerryon Johnson or Darius Geis will. He'll break a lot of tackles through being elusive and being, shifty and in a very, elusive, very hard to catch back is what I'd kind of categorize him as, because if he gets in the open field, you may or may not catch him. He did have that one play against Texas, I think think early in the season, where he caught the ball at like the 30 and then just like outran everybody, just took an angle, just absolutely outran everybody to the pylon. And I think that really showed like how versatile and how big of a playmaker he is for that USC Trojan team. Just a couple things that I want to say about him in terms of some of the knocks that I've seen people have on his game is that he doesn't necessarily fight through tackles. So if he gets caught behind the line, he's not necessarily going to try and fight through that. He's just going to kind of take it and say, okay, I'll just take the loss of 3 yards or whatever. But he does try very hard to break through tackles, and he does try very hard to just get through people and to make a miss and try to make a big play out of it. But he's not necessarily the biggest guy, so it's harder for him to do that than a guy like Darius Slay or Akron Johnson or anybody else on this list. It's a little bit harder for him since he's on the smaller end, but I think he's going to be a guy that kind of surprises at the combine. I think he'll run a faster time than a lot of people think that he looked at when running on the field, I guess, because field speed and 40 speed are two totally different things, and they relate in a sense, but once you get out there on the field, speed, like game speed, is way different than just running a 40 speed. But Ronald Jones has some of the best game speed that I've seen out of a running back in this class. He's very, very good, and he can make his own holes sometimes. He's very good. He's got very good vision. His cutbacks are excellent. I think that he really does look for the holes. It's not just he waits for a hole to open up. He can look for holes and see them on the offensive line if it's a zone or something like that. He can hit something up early. He can cut it up early. He can bounce it out. He can cut it back. He's very good and very elusive and very versatile in that aspect. But he just there's just a couple things I have to knock on him. Like I said earlier, he's just a little too small, and his tackle breaking ability isn't where I want it to be. But him being elusive is very, very good. I think he'll just have to put on some muscle once he gets in the league, which isn't a very tough thing to do. But that's Ronald Jones at the number 2 spot, and we're going to jump into the top spot, which you guys probably already know who it is by now, but we're going to jump into that right now. All right, moving on to the final spot, the number 1 spot in the ranking video. And I think you guys already know who it's going to be. There's really no introduction needed. He's the best player in college football. He's the most electric. He's the most game-changing player probably that we've seen in the last few years. I'm going to say, I don't know, maybe electricity, Johnny Manziel. He gave the most vibe to the game. He gave the most, he just created an atmosphere around college football that made fans really want to watch it and really want to tune in to see him play. And that is what our number 1 prospect, our number 1 running back prospect did. And that guy is Saquon Barkley from Penn State. There's not a lot really that I can say about him that hasn't already been said. He's an absolute beast. He runs like he's a madman. He's like 230 pounds, 225 pounds, I'm pretty sure. And he's going to run a super fast 40 time. I can already guarantee you that. He's very powerful. He can run people over. He can juke you out. His footwork is absolutely insane. His ability to pass block is very, very good too. And that's something that like you don't see a lot of. Like him and Akron Johnson are some of the few guys in this draft that are going to be able to pass block and be effective at that day 1 coming into the NFL. But he's an absolute freak athlete. I think his freshman year he set the power clean record at Penn State, like for 400 pounds or something like that, and he's a running back. That is like defensive lineman, linebacker, like clean numbers. He is a running back. It's absolutely insane. He's got so much power in his lower body. He's a shorter dude, so he's like more stocky, more built, more low to the ground, and that is a big advantage to him. A lot of people have compared his build to Trent Richardson. I can see the build, but I don't see the play style. He's way faster. He's way more agile. He's less physical in between the tackles, but he can still run somebody over, stiff arm him, do whatever he wants to. He is a complete back. He's better than Ezekiel Elliott when he was coming in. He was better than Leonard Fournette when he was coming in. He's better than most of the recent running backs that we've seen going into the draft. He's already better than them. And I don't like using the term generational talent. I mean, it's a word that does describe this guy. Saquon Barkley is definitely a generational talent, but me personally, I don't like putting those huge labels on people just because, sometimes they don't perform up to that, and then we say, oh, he's not a generational talent, blah, blah, blah. And then we just run our mouths about him and say, yo, look, he didn't even compete. He didn't even step up to the plate. He didn't even fulfill the goals that we had set for him in our minds. We gave him this tag and this label, and he didn't even fulfill that. So I think if one guy can fulfill it, it's going to be this guy. He is an extremely hard worker. Everybody at Penn State loves him. Everybody around the community loves him. He's a very, very good dude. As a lot of guys in this draft are, they're very good people. And a lot of guys on this list are very good guys too. There's a guy like Nick Chubb that's not on this list who's had to overcome a ton of adversity and a ton of injuries. Not a ton of injuries, but just one very significant injury, and that's kind of why I left him off the list a little bit, because that's a huge injury to go through in college. But to see him battle back, that's very good. And Saquon Barkley is probably the best running back prospect we've seen in the last, 10, 15 years maybe. I couldn't even rattle off a guy who was just like this good in college. His just ability to be so versatile as this year. I think last year he was less active in the pass game. I'd like to say he was less active in the receiving game, but this year he really showed that he could be a very good wide receiver, or not a wide receiver, but a very good catching back, and he can just pretty much do it all. He can literally do everything that you need a running back to do. If it's 4th and 1, you're not going to have to bring in a power back to get the first down. He's going to get it for you. If you want to run a toss play or a stretch play, you can toss it to him because he's fast enough to get to the edge. If you want to throw the ball or line somebody up in the slot, you don't have to bring in a different running back or a slot receiver to fill that spot. Saquon can go out there and do it for you, and that's why I think he is the #1 overall running back prospect in this year's draft. Alright, that's going to do it for the video, guys. Let me know what you think about my rankings down in the comment section below. Let me know if you think that there's a guy that's too high or too low, or if there's somebody that I left off this list entirely, because I do know that this running back class is very deep and very good. There's a lot of good athletes and a lot of good running backs in this year's class, so I know that there are some names that I left off this list. But with all that being said, I am going to be posting more videos like this. Probably going to stick off with the offensive side of the ball. If you want to see a different position, let me know down in the comment section below. If you want like D-back, linebacker, all that good stuff, I do have all my rankings finalized. Just probably going to go back and watch some more film about all them and see, get a final ranking system. The combine is coming up here. I think it starts this Friday, as today is Wednesday when I'm recording this video, so I will probably be doing day reactions. Like, I'll watch the combine, look up the stats, the numbers, all that good stuff, and then I'll react to it. And I'll post a day 1 reaction, this reaction, all that stuff. So I'll probably do that, and then another mock draft will be coming out after the combine is done, because then that can, help me determine how athletic and how good people are just in terms of drills and all that good stuff. So yeah, this has been XLT signing out.